All right, guys. Happy Friday. Friday again. Show number two. We had a great show on the first one. We already got 180 something on the first show already. I got another copyright again. Yeah, those long videos. The only ones I gotta stay with the main ones when they're long. Mel and I think Mel's the only one I would do the long one on. So and we got Lucy Mom. Where are you at, Lucy? I was trying to reach ya. Lori. Babysitting again, huh? Or why were you lurking yesterday, or eyes? I didn't see you come in yesterday. So, hope everybody have a good weekend and another weekend. And June, we got June 1st coming up already. What is that? Oh, Monday, June 1st. I think Monday is June 1st. So, a lot of good videos out there to share. So we got a lot of good stuff again tonight. We don't have a second Billy Bean yet. But I got other ones to play. We'll wait a couple more minutes here. So there was an explosion at the shuttle place, I think in Florida last night. I just found a better clip that's 2 minutes, so I won't play those other three. And after that one, I'm going to play the Nick Shirley video that came out. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Hope we get a good crowd to get in tonight. I'll watch my baseball game here at 7, playing the White Sox.
Test at Cape Canaveral. The fireball turning the night sky into an orange glow and the shockwave shaking houses. This dramatic scene unfolding during an engine firing test of a Blue Origin rocket, the company describing what happened as an anomaly. Eyewitness News reporter Michelle Fisher with new details tonight on the explosion and what it means for NASA. Michelle.
Well, Mark, this is a significant setback for Blue Origin. This rocket was set to play a key role in future moon missions. Tonight, we are hearing from NASA and Blue Origin owner Jeff Bezos.
Dramatic images tonight of the moment a Blue Origin rocket explodes on the launch pad during an engine firing test Thursday in Cape Canaveral, Florida. A massive orange fireball illuminating the night sky. Nearby homes in Central Florida rattled. Blue Origin owner Jeff Bezos posting on X, "It's too early to know the root cause, but we're already working to find it. Very rough day, but we'll rebuild whatever needs rebuilding and get back to flying. It's worth it." Thursday's explosion comes ahead of a launch that was planned for next week for the Blue Glenn rocket to send 48 broadband satellites into low Earth orbit. According to officials at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, no one was hurt. Brevard County, Florida authorities allowing the contained fire from the explosion to burn itself out. Elon Musk sending his condolences on X, writing, "Sorry to see this. I hope you recover quickly." It was less than a week ago that Musk's SpaceX Starship V3 mega rocket burst into flames after landing in the Indian Ocean. The FAA now investigating that incident. As for the New Glenn rocket, Blue Origin has been working with NASA on plans to use the rocket to send lunar landers to the moon for the Artemis and moon-based programs. Thursday's unexpected explosion, a significant setback.
And tonight, NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman, saying via X that the agency will be working with Blue Origin on an investigation and also to assess mission impacts with the ultimate goal of getting back to launching rockets. Reporting live tonight, I'm Michelle Fisher, ABC.
Hey, that was last night in Florida. I got 2 articles I was going to read real quick before we do Nick's video. Okay. The 3 word and the T word authorize arrest. P76 suspect child P rescued 89 children. So that's good news. 89 children out of Texas. This one. Thanks, Carol. Major statewide operation led by Ohio Attorney General. 122 arrests. 15 counties are part of the operation, and I'm not sure how many. And it didn't say how many recovered. So those are two important ones there. All right, now let's the Nick video. Ah, long commercial.
The state of California to
22
look
minutes.
into fraud, specifically inside of immigration support services providers. They're trying to make it illegal to expose fraud. And so after making more than 4 different versions of this bill, they voted on it again inside the California State Assembly, and it passed overwhelmingly with 49 votes saying yes. And what's concerning about this is now it will go to the California Senate. And when I actually confronted these people about this bill a few months back, one of the persons who was actually in the Senate in California, his name's like something with a wiener in it. I think it's like Scott Wiener. He even said that I was a psycho scam artist. Could you give us your opinion really quick on AB 2624?
I think you're a psycho scam artist. So
you think I am? Please disclose how you think. And so this bill passed, and now it's going to the Senate inside of California. But let's hear what Mia Bonta had to say about this bill, as she's the one who created this. And then we're also going to get into the nitty-gritty and the conflict of interest with Mia Bonta. So let's hear what Mia Bonta had to say about this bill.
AB 2624 we've taken clarifying amendments in order to address feedback from First Amendment organizations.
She knows the bill is so bad that she had to take back feedback from First Amendment organizations because this bill is a direct violation of the First Amendment. And now they try to do different things in this new version of the bill, but as you read it over again, it is still a complete violation of the First Amendment.
So what does AB 2624 do? The Safe at Work Act. It enables California's Safe at Home program to include immigrant service providers, their employees and volunteers. This program, nearly 30 years old, allows participants to use a substitute address designated by the Secretary of State, keeping their home, work, and school addresses out of public records while still allowing them to safely receive mail and legal documents through the state. This gives them a critical layer of protection and privacy in an environment where their personal safety is increasingly at risk. Individuals who provide vital immigrant support services, including legal aid, humanitarian relief, case management, and advocacy, are facing targeted harassment. This is not hypothetical.
Now, what she failed to say right there is it also includes healthcare. So they're trying to protect illegal migrants, immigrants, communities, or anybody who gives services to immigrants. They're trying to protect that information from being public. We know that millions upon millions of dollars of fraud takes place inside of these immigration support services because these politicians use the immigrant communities to commit fraud. And so what Mia Bonta is saying is she's saying that the immigration support services are underneath attack and that all their information needs to be held confidential. But let's break down what she means when she says designated immigration support services. According to her bill right here, it says that designated immigration support services means services provided to the immigrant population, including but not limited to legal representation, legal assistance, advocacy, case management, humanitarian relief, immigration resources, referrals, translation services, counseling services, and healthcare. And they put the word healthcare at the very bottom. They did that very slyly because that's where a lot of the fraud takes place inside of California with their program called Medi-Cal, for instance. The hospice fraud that took place inside the Armenian community, inside of Van Nuys, that was being done by immigrants, and they would essentially be protected underneath this law because they're also providing services to immigrants, and by exposing them, that would then become essentially criminal according to this bill right here. You could face a $4,000 fine, and we're going to get into these revisions they've made as well, because prior it was a $10,000 or $50,000 fine. But because of the public pressure that we put on them, they've now actually eliminated the $10,000 and $50,000, and they've done some new changes with the wording, let's just say that. But let's hear a counter argument from a man who's also a member of the California State Assembly with the last name of DeMaio, who's been a big supporter and who's actually called out this bill, and he's nicknamed it the Stop Nick Shirley Act. Let's hear what he has to say, as this quite literally is such a violation of the First Amendment. He tries to make it very obvious to all the other people inside of the assembly that this is a violation of the First Amendment, and let's hear what he has to say.
I want my colleagues to at least read the language that we find to be quite offensive and unconstitutional in this bill. This is the Stop Nick Shirley Act.
Mr. DeMaio, unfortunately, I need.
See, they all react as soon as he says the Stop Nick Shirley Act. Everyone inside the assembly on the Democrat side freaks out.
A new era of American shipbuilding is here.
This is what many are calling the Stop Nick Shirley Act. This provision right here, B1. This is look, I'm not going to support the bill overall, but at the very least, if you support freedom of speech and the First Amendment, B1 is a problem. And let me quote it in plain English, directly from the bill. A person shall not publicly post or display on the internet the image of a designated immigrant support services provider. That's the language, plain and simple. It goes on to say, well, only if this so-called provider has given a written request. So let me give you an example. Nick Shirley shows up with his camera crew to the Somali Leering Center, or maybe one of the 90 fake hospices operating in a building in Los Angeles that was highlighted by CBS News. Shows up doing the work of a citizen watchdog journalist. This is something we should promote. We should say, look, we want extra set of eyes. People have a right to go out there and kick the tires and find out what are these organizations doing with our taxpayer funds. Nick Shirley records empty beds at the daycare center, records no patients, no medical supplies, no nurses, no doctors at the fake hospices. On the basis of this research, investigative research, posts this on the internet, interviews some of the providers. And all these people do is they hand Nick Shirley a business card.
Excuse me, Mr. DeMaio. Assemblymember Bonta, you are recognized for your point of order.
I asked the member from San Diego to actually stick to the merits of this bill, which actually has nothing to do with so-called.
Thank you, Assemblymember.
And now Mia Bonta jumps in and she says, this has actually nothing to do with Nick Shirley. However, this bill was only created after I had exposed widespread fraud inside the Somali community inside
so
Minnesota,
far on this one.
and then also the Armenian community with the hospices in Los Angeles. So this bill actually has a lot to do with me, because they're now trying to go in and cover up the fraud from being exposed. Because if this bill was in place before I filmed those videos, then it would have made it criminal for me to go out and look for fraud inside of the communities like in Van Nuys, where all the hospice fraud was taking place, for instance. So Mia Bonta, this bill actually has a lot to do with me. And with this bill, it also includes nonprofits, in which nonprofits are used by these politicians. These nonprofits receive hundreds of millions of dollars every single year inside of California. And these nonprofits often fuel what these politicians want to do inside of these communities. In fact, one of the people who are behind this bill is called Churla, and Churla has now been exposed for funding and for actually carrying out a lot of the protests that took place last summer inside of California, inside of Los Angeles. And now let's continue with what Carl DeMaio has to say.
If you show up and take video of those providers under this bill, all they would have to do, all the fraudsters would have to do, is hand a business card over to the investigative journalist. And if they posted that evidence that they caught on video on the internet, they would be violating this law. The lawyers in this room know that absolutely, under this language, would be prohibited from being posted to the internet. This is outrageous. And I'm urging you to uphold the First Amendment and to protect the right of citizen journalists like Nick Shirley and others to do the work that they've been doing. And they've been exposing fraud. And this is fraud that taxpayers ought to know about. This is the dollars of taxpayers, and we have an obligation to make sure that the transparency is provided. You can hue and cry all you want, but that's the language. And I just walked you through a real example of what Nick Shirley and other citizen journalists do and how it would be made illegal under this bill. When you vote for this, that's what you're voting to do. You are now put on notice, and then when the controversy continues to increase, that's your responsibility.
So this man stands up to all the rest of the assembly, shout out to Cardamayo, because he's actually speaking truth and he's reading it straight from the bill that Mia Bonta has created. And I also want to remind you guys really quick before we go into the other segments of this video is I want you guys to join Anti-Fraud Club. It's a club that we created. It's called antifraudclub.com. It's essentially a newsletter that we created to be able to track and keep up with all of the fraud that's being exposed here inside the United States. So go ahead and subscribe. It's completely free. There is an option if you do want to become a member that then helps support the team that I have built to go out and expose this fraud, to keep track of all of it. And then we also have hoodies and other stuff available on the site. So go to antifraudclub.com. The link is in the description or in the pinned comment down below. And now let's get back into this bill, the Stop Nick Shirley Act. And so now this lady is going to stand up and she's going to say why she supports the bill. Let's hear what she has to say.
I rise to support Assembly Bill 2624 at a time when immigrant communities across this country are being demonized for political gain. We have the responsibility to protect the people on the front lines who serve those families every single day. These are legal aid workers. These are nonprofit staff. These are translators. These are counselors. These are faith leaders and volunteers helping families navigate impossible circumstances. And because they dare stand with the immigrant communities, they are being unjustly targeted. Their safety is put at a risk by people who believe intimidation is a political strategy. This is not a game. This is not a social media stunt. And we should not legitimize harassment, meaning through campaigns designed to terrorize people out of public service. We are all here doing a public service, aren't we? Do we stand to be terrorized out of our public service? I think not. So let's say the quiet part out loud. Some people are angry that immigrant communities are protected and fighting back against fear-based politics. Let's just call it what it is. So Assembly Bill 2624 draws a clear line, and we will protect our immigrant communities and their advocates. And with that, I respectfully ask for and I vote for Assembly Bill 2624.
So this lady gives her case why she wants this bill to get passed, and the bill does eventually get passed. And the reason why people are so upset about these immigration support services is because it's been well known that there's millions and millions of dollars of fraud that's taking place. And so these politicians are actually using these immigrant communities to commit fraud. Nobody wants to go after immigrants. We all believe and we all want our tax dollars being funded back to America, but we don't want it being funded and given to people who came into this country illegally. And that's what these people are supporting. And that's how the fraud's been able to go on for so long, because they actually use immigrant communities to commit fraud. That's what people don't understand. I've seen it firsthand for the past few years now, that the politicians use the immigrants to commit the fraud, to continue to funnel and fund whatever they need to get done inside the state of California, whether that's through campaigns, with the donations that come through, or with the agendas they want to push inside of their communities. And now Assemblyman David J. Topinga is going to talk about why he does not support AB 2624, and let's see what he has to say.
This bill
ice cream
is a Trojan horse using a good program to add bad safeguards for what a lot of people in not only the state of California, but across the United States is seeing today that is one of their number one issues: fraud and corruption and the weaponization of what's happened in our government, especially when it includes nonprofits, non-governmental organizations, and what they're doing with our money. As we say, we're using this bill in an attempt to protect immigration support services. In the bill itself, the definition, as I read it to you verbatim.
Did he just say protect immigrants? You're supposed to be protecting Americans. Oh.
Designated immigration support services means services provided to the immigrant population, including, but not limited to, legal representation, legal assistance, advocacy, case management, humanitarian relief, immigration support, referrals. But the definition of what a designated immigration support service provider is expanded beyond just employees and volunteers. It includes nonprofit organizations with no limitations. It includes any facility deemed to be protected by the Attorney General. That is what makes this bill different. The broadening of the definitions. But not only that, in the Safe at Home program as well, they do not include posting online. It is a verifiable fact that we have fraud in our system, that they have identified in multiple organizations across the entire state of California. We alone, on 3 cases, found over $250 million in fraud. Where
Mr. Tangipa, we need to stay to strictly to the merits of the legislation and not on a broader conversation.
Notice how when they start talking about fraud being exposed, the Democrats inside of this assembly freak out and they try to actually stop them from talking about why people are opposed to this bill.
This talks about posting. And that is...
If you're talking about posting, let's talk about posting.
Yes.
That's very different than what you were just talking about. Let's stay to the merits of this bill, please.
Well, again, in the merits of the bill, when it comes to talking about posting these facilities, if you read the definition itself, it looks like we're adding safeguards to cover up. Instead of going after fraud, corruption, we are going after the ability to post that online. And again, as we read it, designated immigration support services as a definition means a facility where immigration support services provided, including, but not limited to nonprofit organizational offices, Department of Justice recognized entities, community legal clinics, law offices, accredited representative sites that provide immigration legal services. It is such a broad definition. This is a Trojan horse for an issue that a lot of Americans and Californians especially care about. They want us to find the problems, not add protections for bad actors. I respectfully ask for a no vote.
And so that's the big problem with this bill is they're trying to make it illegal and they're trying to go after your First Amendment right to post publicly on the internet or anywhere where you want. Just the fact that potentially something might be happening, but because it's an immigration support provider, that will then make it illegal. So 49 people voted yes and only 19 people voted no. And now this bill is going to be headed to the California Senate. And from there, they're going to go and vote. And so what's super concerning about this bill to me is it quite literally is a direct violation on the First Amendment. And Mia Bonta even acknowledges that when she first gets up to talk about this bill. She says because of First Amendment organizations, we've made some amendments to this bill, and now we have some changes. But all they did was change some wording inside this new amendment, and yet it is still a complete violation of the First Amendment. Let me just read you a few of the examples here from the bill. And so the most obvious case here is the one that they already said during that session, but I'll read it again. It says a person, business, or association shall not publicly post or publicly display, disclose, or distribute on the internet the personal information or image of a designated immigration support service provider. And then it goes on to say, a written demand made under this paragraph shall include a statement declaring that the individual is subject to the protection of this section and describing a reasonable fear for the safety of that individual or any person residing at the individual's home address based on the violation of the subdivision. So they're basically saying that if you go out and you go expose a location for committing fraud, potential alleged fraud. Let's just say it's alleged fraud. And then that person says, well, hey, if you film that video, that's going to cause a reasonable fear to me and to our business. So I'm actually going to give you this piece of paper and I'm going to sign it. And so that means that you cannot post this video publicly. And if you do post this video publicly, you're then going to have to go to court and you might have to pay a $4,000 civil fine. And you're also going to have to pay back our attorney fees when we then take you to court for exposing our fraud. And so let's take the hospice fraud, for example, inside of California, because it's being committed by immigrant communities, the Armenians, and they could be providing services to immigrants with their hospice care that they're then providing to, let's say, an immigrant. So let's say you go to Miracle Hospice inside of California. You go there and there's actually nobody there. And while you're exposing the hospice that doesn't exist, somebody inside the building who also owns a hospice comes out and says, hey, you cannot be filming this property because we also own a hospice here and we provide service to immigrants. And then they give you a piece of paper that says, hey, you cannot post that video publicly. Then you can actually not post that video publicly. So let's say, theoretically, that happened when I was filming my hospice video, because there was a hospice called Miracle Hospice that had absolutely nobody there. And then a man came out screaming and shouting at us for exposing all the other ghost hospices. If that man then gave me a piece of paper and said, hey, you cannot post that video because my hospice is also here, you cannot then post that video. They're trying to make it illegal and criminal to go after those that expose fraud. While we should be celebrating people who expose fraud, California right now is actively trying to make it harder for fraud to be exposed. And what makes this bill so crazy is that when I went down to California to confront those people that created this bill, they had absolutely no idea about this bill, or at least they acted like they had no idea. I asked them just plain simple facts about this bill, and they could not even give any responses to the bill. In fact, each and every single one of them that were the co-authors of this bill lied straight to my face and ran inside where I could not enter. What makes this bill super crazy is that the Attorney General's wife is actually Mia Bonta. So you have the Attorney General whose job is to expose and prosecute and find fraud. His name is Rob Bonta. And then you have his wife, Mia Bonta, who is actively right now creating this bill that has just got passed now to the Senate of California. And luckily, I was able to expose this bill right when it started, because initially what this bill said is they were going to give out $10,000 fines with up to 1 year jail time. And then also, if it was a felony, they were going to give you a $50,000 fine. And they've now dropped that from the wording, and now it just says any provision of the law. However, till this day right now, you do face civil liability if you were to then expose fraud, and then the fraudster said, hey, we actually gave you a piece of paper that said you couldn't expose the fraud that we were committing. So you'd actually have to have, right now, if this bill gets passed into law, you have treble actual damages and a minimum of a $4,000 court cost, and then you'd also have to pay the attorney fees, which is crazy. So right now you currently have the largest state in America trying to make it harder for fraud to be exposed by passing this bill, AB 2624, aka the Stop Nick Sherwood Act. Remember, if you want to support my work, go to antifraudclub.com, subscribe to the newsletter, completely free, and then it also has hoodies and tees available as well. Thank you all so very much, and we'll see what happens next with this bill.
Okay, that was a big video again from Nick Shirley. I want to do some short videos. Bunch of short ones here now.
Here, I'll move out of the way so you can pause and read. I don't remember which David Wilcock book it was, but he talked about the definitions, like the actual Hebrew words for hell. There's like 2 of them in the Bible, and it's not what they say it is. People don't take it seriously because they're being lied to about what it is. And what he said in one of his books, I forget because I read all of his books. He said that when you commit a sin against somebody, when you do something to hurt someone else, it comes back to you. And it says that in the Bible. What you sow, so shall you reap. The law of cause and effect is real. And if you have hurt someone else, you have lied, if you have cheated, if you stole, if you knowingly hurt someone, it's coming back to you. But it's going to come back so much worse. So much worse. That's why I think we Catholics say, Lord, have mercy. Lord, have mercy on these people that have hurt other people and who are thinking that they got away with it. Guess what? Today's the first day of the wheat harvest. Today is the first day of Shavuot or Pentecost. And the people who are the barley people, the people who woke up first, it's 10% of the population. I'm a barley. It's not fun being barley because you wake up first and everybody thinks you're crazy. But the wheat people, that's 80% of the population. They're the people that go along with everything. They're the ones that are just like, okay, well, they don't really believe it until they see it. Their tribulation, which tribulation comes from the word tribular, which means to thresh, like a threshing board. Barley people, we've had it bad. Like I've really suffered this last decade. I think because God needs us to be leaders in the new earth, and that's why we had to go through what we went through. But the barley people don't suffer the way that the wheat people will.
It's not over.
This summer, starting today through mid-August, if you've been one of these people that have lied, have been lying, cheating, stealing, putting things off on other people, blaming others, it's coming. And you will suffer the consequences, and it will be much, much worse than anything you did to anyone else. I believe this is what they mean by the lake of fire. And I do believe it's going to happen right here on earth. I don't think it's going to happen after you die. That's why people aren't afraid of it. They're like, I'll be dead anyway. It doesn't matter. No. Public humiliation is the worst. It's the absolute worst thing you can experience. And everyone's going to see what you did.
Okay. I hope that one was okay. Oh. 3.5.
People are sick of the government's shit. They are sick of the city council. They are sick of all these people thinking that they can make decisions for our own health.
Absolutely. Do it better and not hurt our environment.
We're in the room full, a lot of people. Sit right there.
Anybody at any time is allowed to call out a violation of the Sunshine Law.
Why is this so important, and why do you need to go to these meetings, and why this is detrimental to all of humanity, wildlife, plant life, and the environment? So if you are, here's the effects. At the fence line, so there are many of these centers that are going to be built literally across the street from homes, apartment centers, or apartment buildings, neighborhoods. I'll tell you why. There is constant noise. There is a low frequency noise. Now, at this meeting last night, the developer, the billionaire developer that wants to build these data centers said, we are following the ordinance of the noise compliance. Now, why is that gaslighting? Because the noise is called infrasound. You cannot hear it, although some people do hear it and said it sounds like a vacuum that's on for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The infrasound is not something that you can hear. It's something that is felt in the body, which causes nausea, a vibrating feeling, dizziness, tremors. The list goes on. So low frequency vibration, loss of property value, electronic waste of hazardous materials and disposal, destroying wildlife habitats, destroying human habitats. That's at the fence line in very close proximity. This is if you are within a mile, you're destroying the natural filtering of groundwater, zero to minimal local jobs, increased increased risk of cancer, brain tumors. That's if you're within a mile. Many of these people are literally going to be living across the street from these centers, and they are coming to a town near you. Health issues that are being reported already in other cities or states: dizziness, nausea, vertigo, sleep disruption from infrasound, children having heart murmurs, elderly having earlier onset of dementia, chickens laying 50% less eggs, calves, cows, goats, sheep, pigs losing 30% of their body weight. Across the country, local citizens have begun organizing against these projects because they are witnessing the same patterns repeatedly. I'll give you a fun fact: Utah, one proposed AI data center will produce the thermal energy of 23 atomic bombs daily and spans 40,000 acres. This is in Utah. This was an analysis done by Utah State University, not my facts. If there are meetings in your vicinity, you need to go. People were very passionate. People were very heated. We are tired of being used as human experiments for greed. If there are meetings, you need to go.
We do not consent! Yeah, I thought that was an important one there. Got another 3-minute one.
In a single year, the Empire State Building, from 1930 to 1931, a 102-story high, 1,250-foot tall skyscraper that was the tallest building in the world until 1970. 12 months or less. We are told this was done. Remember, they have to work through winters. And this story gets extremely interesting and begins to show us how they do this and how these buildings are quickly thrown into the narrative where people didn't even have a chance to verify what was even really going on in the early 1900s, where they're telling us that the Waldorf Astoria was constructed in 1893, and then they demolish it in 1929, making way for the construction of the Empire State Building. So immediately, alarms should be going off in all of our minds. This narrative has just started, and we have already found something massive, where they were knocking down Renaissance Revival style hotels after just 36 years. Now, a side note, I just want to add in my personal opinion at this point, where you can believe whatever you like. But I believe that these buildings, as we've seen in Chicago, were actually constructed somewhere else in New York City. And they were demolished in 1929, but not to be replaced by the Empire State Building. I believe that the Empire State Building was always here. And these construction photos are ridiculous, where they are clearly edited. And they even admit that some of these photos were basically to trick the public when they say that this famous photo of the guys sitting on the beam was arranged as a publicity stunt, all a part of a campaign promoting the skyscraper. Now, this is for the Rockefeller Center, but only 1 year after the Empire State Building. So they were in the business of doctoring photos during this time period, manipulating the public. So this is not a shocking accusation at this point, since we have seen this so many times, especially when the identity of the actual photographer remains unknown. They have a lie on the wall. What else can we find? Remember, they have to get all the men. They need to get everything ready. And then, after all that's done, knock out the tallest building in the world. All completed in 1931. When they start putting this building in the movies, like King Kong, and showing the world that this is the brand new building, where we all know how the industry works at this point. We all know how it goes. We know that it promotes the narrative that it wants to, and it promotes the people that are in the group, and that's fine. They can do that. But it is our job to understand what is going on. And what has been going on for a very long time, where it says, it is the first of many iconic roles the building will play on the silver screen. And among its most important pop culture moments, in my opinion, this is an old world building that they are just throwing right into our timeline, right during the Great Depression, and pretending like it was never there before. This is a magic trick, and I bet you they were laughing the entire time.
Okay, I hope that was good there. I got a 14-minute one about 1111 number. So let you guys know on that one. It's Melissa Red Pill, I think her name is.
end times. And so I'm going to show you the verse here in Revelation 11:11. I'm going to start with verse 1. And so this has been a big, a big deception. They actually teach this as if it's not symbolic, and but Revelation is chock full of symbolism. And so you might have a difference of opinion on what the symbolism is, but you can't say that this is not symbolism. It's anyway. Well, I'll show you as we read on. You'll be like, oh, of course this is symbolism. Then I was given a measuring stick, and I was told, go and measure the temple of God and the altar and count the number of worshipers, but do not count the outer court, for it has been turned over to the nations. This is exactly what the Lord told Zechariah. He was to measure the temple. Again, we're trying to see, is the temple, are the religious institutions doing their job? Are they doing their job to prevent evil from going on in the earth? Of course, that's what their job is. But are they doing it? And the answer is no. But he's supposed to go and measure it. Figure out, are they doing their job? And not to measure the outer court, people outside of the temple, measure in the temple, in God's house, whether it's in Judaism or Islam or Christianity, whatever, are they doing their job to make sure that people are treated fairly and things go right in their society? That's their purpose. Are they doing their job? But they will trample the holy city for 42 months. 42 months is a symbolic period of struggle and of striving, of working to defeat the enemy. And they just of warfare. Okay, that's what every time it's used, it's always used in that way. You can do your own research. And then 42 months and 42 weeks, sometimes in 3.5 years and 3.5 days. Those are all equivalent. 3.5 years is the same as 42 months, which is the same as 1,260 days. If you look at it, you'll see that it's all equivalent. I will give power to my 2 witnesses, and they will be clothed in burlap and will prophesy during those 1,260 days. It's not about a physical exact 1,260 days. It's about during this period of struggle, this period of striving. And they will have burlap on, talking about how they are mourning because of the overtaking of evil in the society. And that's what you and I have been clothed in burlap. As much as we have faith and as much as we know that the Lord is rescuing us, it has still been sad to see all the evil that has gone on, whether it's COVID or the children or whatever it is. It's just maddening. And we are clothed in burlap because we want the Lord to deliver us from evil, right? Okay, so verse 4, these 2 prophets are the 2 olive trees and the 2 lampstands that stand before the Lord of all the earth. If anyone tries to harm them, fire flashes from their mouths and consumes their enemies. This is how anyone who tries to harm them must die. These 2 prophets, it's not individual people, it's symbolic. What are the 2 prophets throughout God's word? It's the church and the state. It's the religious institutions and the government institutions. Those are the 2 that are to bring olive trees is to bring healing, and light, which is to bring righteousness and peace in the world. That is their 2 jobs. The 2 institutions are the church and the state, the religious institutions and the government institutions. If anyone tries to harm them, fire flashes from their mouths. Who has the fire that can flash from their mouths? It's not physical fire. It is the judgment of God, both the both these institutions, the religious and the government, have the power to bring down judgment on people, put them in prison, remove them from, from the church, so that people realize, hey, I don't want to do these evil things, because then the consequences will follow. That's how, if you try to harm the church or the state, then you're going to be bearing the consequences. That's what it's talking about. They have power to shut the sky so that no rain will fall for as long as they prophesy. Who shut the sky? Of course, our dear Elijah shut down the sky, caused Ahab and Jezebel, the Baal worshipers, to be so angry. And Ahab and Jezebel were shut down, and the evil was shut down. Then the rain came back. Anyway, and they have the power to turn the rivers and the oceans into blood, and to strike the earth with every kind of plague as often as they wish. Who is that? That's, of course, Moses. He was the one who struck the water and it turned into blood. He was the one who did all the plagues in Egypt to stop the evil that was going on in Egypt. And so here you see, and later it's going to talk about a little bit about Sodom and Egypt. These are just places where they have evil that's going on. Sodom has evil of the sexual perversion. Egypt has evil of the tyranny. Verse 7, when they complete their testimony, these two prophets complete their testimony, the beast that comes out of the bottomless pit will declare war against them, and he will conquer them and kill them. This is what's happened. You have churches on every corner. You have mosques on every corner. You have government institutions on every corner, and they have been ineffective. They have been killed, basically. They were not doing their job to bring righteousness and peace in the earth. That's just the fact of it. The evil has just completely taken over all over the world. And their bodies will lie in the main street of Jerusalem, the city that is figuratively called Sodom and Egypt, the city where their Lord was crucified. They're lying dead right in the street where all this sexual perversion is going on, where all this tyranny is going on, and they are doing nothing. See, it's symbolic. It's not about people lying in the street. And get this, for 3.5 days. Remember how I was telling you about that symbolism of the 3.5 days? It's a period of struggle. For that period, all the people, tribes, and languages and nations will stare at their bodies, and no one will be allowed to bury them. It's symbolic. You're not going to have people lying dead in the street for 3.5 days. They literally teach that that's what's going to happen, and that's not it. It's symbolic that the churches and all the religious institutions and all the governments, all these officials are there in place, and it looks like everything should be going along hunky-dory and just wonderful, and it's not. It's not. All it's doing is everyone's staring and they're not doing anything. They're not doing a thing to stop all this mayhem. And you're like, what's going on with you people? Why are you just so absolutely ineffective? Because it's basically dead. They've been killed by this criminal cabal, this satanic criminal cabal. Why? Because they've been infiltrated, right?
I want to tell you a story.
I used to believe that Jesus was
all the people who belong to this world will gloat over them and give presents to each other to celebrate the death of the two prophets who had tormented them. We have tormented them because we have called for justice. They do not want justice. You think about Obama, you think about Netanyahu, you think about Carney, you think about Soros, you think about Fauci. We have tormented them because they want to do this evil, and we have said, no, we want justice in this earth. We want our children protected, and they have been tormented by us. We weren't trying to torment. We're just trying to bring peace in the earth. And so, but they've taken it as torment because they are operating under the compulsion of demons. All right. So then it says, favorite verse, Revelation 11:11. But after 3.5 days, God breathed life into them, into these two prophets, the church and the state, and they stood up. After 3.5 days, again, the period of struggle, after all this striving and the back and the forth and the striving and the warfare of struggle, they stood up because God breathed life into them. This is what we are experiencing. God breathed life into us, and we woke up. As I was reading to you earlier, wake up, and the light of Christ will shine on you. He shined on us. He touched our minds. He touched our hearts. He made us come alive. We're no longer dead. We're alive, and we're realizing what's going on, and we are standing up. We stood up, and we've taken a lot of guff, but that's okay. We're still here standing. Terror struck all who were staring at them. Why are they terrified? It says this many times in the Old Testament that when they see the woman in labor, that beautiful sign I was telling you about that's on my website, the sign of the Son of Man, when they see that woman in labor, they'll be in great terror. Why? Because they know that we're not going to stop. We're not going to stop fighting until they are put down. They know that this sign is against them now. They thought it was their sign of victory. It's actually our sign of victory and their day of defeat. They realize there's nothing that can stop what is coming. Now, some people are maybe still brainwashed and really don't realize that. MAGA, all over the world, is unstoppable because this is the Lord. This is biblical. Then a loud voice from heaven called to the two prophets, "Come up here." And they rose to heaven in a cloud as their enemies watched. This is not about physically leaving earth. That's what it's taught to be. It's not that. It's that we are rising to positions of power, as Revelation 20 says, that we will rule and reign with Christ. We are going to rise into these positions of authority, whether it's in your town or whether it's on the internet or whether it's with working like Rubio right next to President Trump, whatever this is, that we will come up here, come up and ascend. We just had Ascension Day. This is about us ascending to these positions and for them to be descending. They rose to heaven in a cloud as their enemies watched. At the same time, there was a terrible earthquake that destroyed a tenth of the city. 7,000 people died in that earthquake, and everyone else was terrified and gave glory to the God of heaven. This is the earthquake of arrests, I believe. And when the first 7,000, and it may not be that exact number, it's a symbolic number, but they will be terrified and turn and repent. We've heard that on the board, that a lot of these people who have been committing treason, like I was just showing you yesterday on the video. They've been doing whatever their editors tell them to do, and they have committed treason. Many of them, if they're not arrested, they will repent and they'll start to tell the truth. We've already heard that on the board, that some of these will even start to tell the truth. So that's what we are expecting once we see the shoe drop and these people arrested. At least whatever number it is, this perfect number, this 7,000 number, and then the rest will be terrified and give glory to God. They're like, I don't want any of that coming on me. It'll be a significant enough number that it will shake people to their core. And they'll realize there's nothing that they can't stop it, and they don't want to get
Should be about 4
the consequences.
minutes. Almost
The second
done.
terror is past, but look, the third terror is coming quickly. Now,
What's
you're
the
going to
matter?
love the third terror. The third terror is not a terror for us. It's a terror for them. The terrors are not for us. It's a terror for them. The seventh trumpet brings the third terror. Then the seventh angel blew his trumpet, and there were loud voices shouting in heaven, "The world has now become the kingdom of our Lord and of his Christ, and he will reign forever and ever." This is what we're waiting for. We're waiting for the world to become the kingdom of our Lord and of his Christ, and he will reign forever. We're waiting for his kingdom come. His will be done on earth as it is in heaven. They don't want that. They don't want that. They don't want that. They fought, and they've run so much of the world for so long, and that it's over. Wait for the third terror. It's not a terror on us, it's a terror on them. And this is what we're going to say. We get, just along with the 24 elders, they fell on their faces, just shocked and so happy. They couldn't even stay on their chairs. They're so happy. They fell to the ground. They worshiped. "We give thanks to you, the Lord God Almighty, the one who is, who always was. For now you've assumed your great power and have begun to reign. The nations were filled with wrath, but now the time of your wrath has come. It's time to judge the dead and reward your servants, the prophets, as well as your holy people and all who fear your name, from the least to the greatest. It's time to destroy those who've caused all this destruction on the earth." I love this. This is Revelation 11. It's so great. If you want to know more about that, definitely check into my book. This one, it's in this book here, End Times in 1,000 Years of Peace. You also can see my videos over on Melissa Red Pill. If you go right here and you go to the videos section and you just go to the Bible, the study guide, you can follow. There's the study guide right there, that we have done the studies week after week after week. I think it's like 27 studies, verse after verse after chapter of the book of Revelation, and talking about end times. It's the end times for them and 1,000 years of peace for us.
So I haven't played her. I can't remember last time I played her. Might have been my first time. But I think she's a popular one though. Someone good to listen to. Okay, the next one is 8 minutes.
Colorado Democrats push controversials through in the dead of night, and Governor Jared Polis shows up to a party meeting with tape over his mouth. It's been a wild, wild week in Colorado and beyond, so let's get into it. Here is your Mountain Minute for May 29th. At Drake Middle School in Jefferson County, a 7th grade student wrote a slam poem this spring expressing her pro-life views on abortion. School officials told her she could turn it in for a grade, but she was not allowed to read it aloud to her classmates. Although the same class had previously shown students America Reloading, a poem containing graphic references to Sandy Hook and lines mocking Christianity for years, until parents spent over a year fighting to get it removed. Parents say the slam poetry unit had long been used to push one-sided political perspectives onto 12-year-olds. The student told Newsmax she believed her poem was treated differently because her teacher and administrators simply didn't agree with what she was saying. Videos posted by the family went viral, racking up over 2 million views, and Rocky Mountain Voice got the original interview with them, so go ahead and check that out. They will also be speaking at Freedom Fest, and it's exactly the kind of story that doesn't get told anywhere in the mainstream media, so we are excited to tell it and see them at Freedom Festival in June. Speaking of what's happening in Colorado classrooms and state houses, the Christian Home Educators of Colorado is calling out the Democrat-controlled legislature for what they're describing as intentional obstruction. According to CHEC, controversial bills were deliberately held into the final days of legislative session when public scrutiny is the lowest. The School Finance Act was amended on the House floor, the last chamber left to vote, meaning the public couldn't testify and most representatives didn't even know what had changed. Other bills pushed through in those final days include an abortion medication access bill for college campuses, a bill redefining domestic violence to include not affirming a child's chosen gender identity, and legislation targeting private and faith-based schools. Meanwhile, bills that would have required age verification for pornographic material online and a parental rights amendment were both killed in committee. Colorado families deserve to know what's being done in the dark, and read the article if you want to know all the details. And then there's this. Just a week after his own party censured him by a stunning 89.8% vote for granting Tina Peters clemency, Governor Jared Polis showed up to an internal Democrat Zoom meeting with tape over his mouth. I'm just going to leave that there. Make of that what you will. And on the topic of Tina Peters, she is now asking the Colorado Supreme Court to overturn her convictions entirely. At the heart of the case is a juror whose business phone lines were cut on the very first Friday of the trial. That juror spent the next 10 days wondering if she was being targeted, spent $4,000 restoring her phone service, and said nothing to the court, all while deliberating toward a verdict that convicted Peters on 4 felonies and 3 misdemeanors. Peters' attorney argued a formal hearing was required under a 1954 U.S. Supreme Court precedent. The trial judge denied it the same afternoon it was filed. The Court of Appeals backed him up, and now it's Colorado's highest court's turn to decide. At the Capitol, a clash erupted over a late session bill allowing nonprofits to collect up to 25% of state grant money upfront before any work is done. When a Republican senator offered an amendment blocking sitting lawmakers or their family members from benefiting from the bill, 13 Democrat senators, many of whom work for nonprofits, voted it down. One state senator has pledged to pursue a restriction next session that would prohibit lawmakers from profiting off taxpayer money. But the conflict of interest here is hard to ignore, you guys. Closer to home for Douglas County residents, the school district is staring down a $22 million deficit heading into the 2026-27 school year. Officials say declining enrollment is driving the shortfall, and they're covering part of it with one-time drawdown of reserves. Board members warned that without structural changes to how Colorado funds schools, next year's cuts could include employees. And Colorado voters who want to actually fix the roads may have a shot this November. Initiative 175, which would require all transportation revenue to actually be spent exclusively on roads, bridges, safety, and the state patrol, has submitted 180,000 signatures, well above the 124,000 needed to qualify. The legislature has already passed a bill to try and neutralize it, but $700 million in state funding is on the line. A new bill awaiting the governor's signature, HB 261111, would create a government enterprise charging fees on pesticide producers and applicators to fund a state-run disposal program. Supporters argue it could actually save farmers money in the long run, while critics are watching closely to see if it's a genuine solution or just another workaround to Colorado's Tabor taxpayer protections. And now on to national news. A federal judge has blocked Democrats' attempt to stop President Trump's executive order on election security. U.S. District Judge Carl Nichols ruled that Democrats failed to demonstrate any actual harm or legal standing to challenge the order at this stage, clearing the way for citizenship verification of voter rolls to move forward. DHS is now going after immigration lawyers who file fraudulent asylum claims. The department has directed ICE to develop enforcement policies targeting attorneys who coach migrants into making false claims of persecution. DHS General Counsel James Percival said it is standard practice in immigration court for lawyers to assert that virtually every illegal alien faces persecution in their home country, a claim DHS says is routinely false. And a guest commentary from the Montrose mayor raises a point worth considering. Sanctuary states like Colorado may be gaming the census by shielding non-citizens from federal enforcement, inflating their population counts and claiming additional congressional seats as a result. According to the Center for Immigration Studies, current trends could redistribute 22 House seats by 2030, with California gaining 9. That's raw political power built on non-citizen population, and Colorado conservatives are pushing back. And finally, on this Friday, a commentary worth your time from Rocky Mountain Voice reminds us that the fight for liberty and free expression is nothing new. John Milton made the case for a free press back in 1644, and the lesson for today is that liberty doesn't defend itself. So get involved, pick an issue, show up, and go read the commentary. That's all for this week. I hope you enjoyed this.
Hey, that was a good one there from Colorado. We got a 10-minute one coming up, I think.
Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. And of course, here's the meme of the day, brought to you by 5mind.com. Well, once again, it appears the left is grasping at straws, people. You know, a couple weeks ago, we were covering that John Fetterman reaction to the Democrats' absolutely insane reaction to the White House ballroom, trying to turn it into some massive scandal and even just straight up continuing to lie about the financial elements that surround that story. And the point I was making in that video is that the left essentially has no talking points outside of Donald Trump is literally Hitler and, oh, here's the latest and greatest in Trump existential scandals. It's very clear, it's very obvious that they stand for absolutely frickin' nothing. They can't win on the ideas, and so instead what they do is try to generate outrage constantly, every single week. But when you've run out of good faith and when you've run out of hoaxes at some point, you know, it just... But of course, that's taking all the way to morning, and this pops up on my timeline. Apparently, this is the latest and greatest Trump scandals. This was posted on r/pics. Quote, the state of America in one image. It shows a photo of the White House ballroom being constructed alongside the UFC Freedom 250 event that's being put up. And as you could imagine, this now takes off in left-wing circles, characters like Amy Siskin and others posting before and after photos with the caption, oh my God, and a broken heart. You know what I was saying earlier, grasping at straws? Is there a better description? I mean, this is the most pathetic thing that I've ever seen in my life. Oh my God, the state of America in one image. What is even the point here? The White House is under construction, being turned bigger and better with a much needed ballroom that's actually going to house below a Secret Service and military facility, likely also a medical facility for the President of the United States and the protection of important people and important events. What is wrong with these people? I mean, where is the source of outrage coming from? At the idea that construction construction's happening. Construction is now what? Somehow a bad thing? It shows the difference in outlook because I see this and I think progress. Construction is a sign of progress. It's a sign of economic movement, maintenance, improvement, kind of the most important thing for maintaining a productive society. Oh no, the president's making the White House better and creating jobs in the process, and doing so without taxpayer reliance. I'm not outraged. If anything, I'm inspired. And to address the UFC Freedom 250 thing, again, the left clearly thinks as if they're onto something. Oh, how classless and tasteless. Oh, how horrible that is. But is it really? Doing a massive event, the UFC is one of the biggest sporting events in the world. They do some of the biggest pay-per-view numbers in the business. Not to mention, it's an American company that likely employs thousands of people. I don't know, maybe even tens of thousands of people, but definitely thousands, right? And here we are celebrating the 250th anniversary of the founding of the country with a massive sporting event on the White House lawn. What's the big deal? Why? Because you don't like Dana White and his politics? Because you think, oh, the UFC is trashy? The whole angle is ridiculous. The president's not allowed to do cool things, to have fun, to do massive events celebrating the country. This is somehow below the White House and below the presidency? Give me a freaking break. You know what was below the presidency and absolutely horrifying to see on the White House lawn? This. Yeah, apparently doing a massively popular sporting event on the White House lawn. That's trashy and disgusting and should be condemned and turned into a political issue that will destroy President Trump's career. But alternative adult lifestyles on the White House lawn while there's kids around and engaging in acts of nudity, yeah, that's perfectly acceptable. That's woke and progressive. These people are out of their damn minds. There's nothing to be ashamed of here. Certainly not in the White House ballroom. The president's taking deliberate efforts to make the White House better, a better building, a more historic building, a more impressive piece of real estate. And we're supposed to accept this shaming? Absolutely freaking not. In fact, the exact opposite is true. What President Trump is doing is bringing back pride and dignity. This goes well beyond the White House ballroom. It goes well beyond the UFC Freedom 250 event. No, it applies to Washington, D.C. in general, which President Trump continues to clean up, ameliorate, and make better. It started off with his crime crackdown, which has had an absolutely incredible effect on the city.
This is Judiciary Square, Washington, D.C., Northwest Washington, D.C. 10 years ago, I used to work in that building. And when you come outside, you see homeless on the streets, you see crazies. I don't know if I should call them crazy, that's the right word, but people that wasn't quite natural. They were all over the place. That it was so-called sanctuary cities. You go around in the alleys and things like that, you see tents, you see feces. I mean, it was just a little bit different. Trump came on the scene and said, everybody got to go back to work. They have to stimulate the economy. Everybody has to go back to work. When that happened, in the afternoons, when you go to the train station, you see the National Guards co-mingling with the people, and it feels like a capital city. Like the water fountains, they used to be shut down. The parks that were closed, all the parks that were closed, the parks are open again. They're being redone. Water is flowing again. I think things just a little bit different. Trump cleaned up the city of D.C. without asking taxpayers for anything. A lot of people feel to realize what this man is doing, whether you like him or not. You got to just look at it sometimes and say, you know what, though? If it's benefiting the city, and I live in the city or work in the city, it benefits me. I've been here for the past 20 years in the same area. And I can see the change.
Areas that used to be completely covered in squalor and filled with vagrants and criminals are now clean and habitable. Washington, D.C., the capital city of the greatest country on planet Earth, was dirty, grimy, ghetto, full of crime. I mean, one of the highest homicide rates and crime rates in the entire nation, not to mention historic infrastructure falling apart, not being maintained well. And now Trump comes in and cleans that up, and he's the bad guy. If anything, it shows the difference between the two sides. The left loves to paint themselves as progressive, but if anything, I'd argue they're quite regressive. And really, we can make a visual argument here. Well, actually, the White House is doing it for me. Weekly reminder, decline is a choice. Here's Columbus Circle under Joe Biden's watch, covered in graffiti, not working, grimy and dirty, and Trump comes in, restoring yet again another monument. He did the same thing to the historic Meridian Hill Park Fountain, another beautiful piece of infrastructure that was left dry for 7 years, left to rot, completely disheveled, and now look at it. The left claims there's a scandal here, another Trump scandal, but my friends, the only scandal is on their side, because these are the people, frankly, it's their ideology, their lack of standards that turned Washington, D.C. into an open frickin' sewer. Tents everywhere, human waste on the sidewalks, crime exploding, parks turned into homeless encampments, the whole city looking like nobody gave an absolute crap about anything. And really, that's the truth now, isn't it? Deep down inside, we know this. A huge chunk of the modern left doesn't actually like America. They don't appreciate it. No, in fact, they resent it. They think the country's irredeemably racist, colonialist, evil. So why maintain it? They'd rather destroy it. But their entire worldview is completely regressive, tearing down statues, enabling criminals, attacking police officers. But really, I think what describes it all, tearing down basic standards, tearing down the country and rewriting its history. These entitled, spoiled brats, these LARPing revolutionaries, they're very simply just unappreciative, spoiled brats, acting like the country owes them something or that the country is irredeemable and needs to be torn down, when the reality is the exact opposite. The country should be maintained and uplifted, and that starts with public spaces, applying basic standards, and most importantly, actually upholding law and order. America's not this irredeemable racist country that should be torn down. It's the greatest social experiment that should be held up. Maintaining these spaces is how you set the standard in the country, how you show respect for the people who came before you. It's how you show the next generation that this place is worth inheriting. These people would rather tear it all down for selfish purposes, of course, just so they could cast themselves as the hero of the story. You know what? There's a perfect metaphor here. The left outraged at Donald Trump building a ballroom. Well, it's very simply because the left builds nothing. All they do is tear things down, destroy, usually with the promise of building back, right? That was actually Joe Biden's slogan, right? Build back better. But the left doesn't ever build anything. They tear down and steal. That's all they ever do. They take. But most importantly, what they're taking usually is power. Maybe that's why they're so angry, because President Trump is actually doing the one thing that they're incapable of, actually maintaining and uplifting something instead of tearing it down. And that right there is the difference, folks. You know, Trump looks at America and he says, this is something worth preserving and improving. Meanwhile, the leftist approach is, this is something worth deconstructing until there's nothing left. One side builds and maintains, and the other side destroys and then whines and blames somebody else when there's nothing left to stand on. You see it everywhere, folks. It's not just in DC, it's in every major Democrat city that Democrats are in control of. They've allowed America's greatest cities to descend into cesspools of filth, crime, and squalor. And President Trump is trying to come in and offer a different image, an image of hope, an image of appreciation and moving forward. You know, real progress, not performative progress, as the left engages in. And so, yeah, once again, Democrats thought they had their scandal, but all they did was expose their backwards thinking once again. Anyways, that's what I got. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.
Hey, Hoodie channel there. Let's play the report guy.
John Michael Chambers, and this is your report. I ask you to listen with love, as where we go one, we go all.
7 minutes.
The following report is provided in part by Guardian Daniel R. Strategic analysis, the optics of collapse, and President Trump's final warfare. This report analyzes the recent political shifts within the global endgame, the apparent decline in Donald Trump's approval ratings, the escalation in Iran, the severe economic crisis, and his targeted attacks on leading figures of his own base, such as Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Thomas Massie, and Marjorie Taylor Greene, are not signs of weakness. They form the most sophisticated and final phase of the deception operation, optics, designed to secure Trump's legacy as the rightful commander-in-chief of presidencies 45-through 47 and pave the way for the transition into the golden age. The operational mechanisms of this phase are divided into the following strategic core areas. Number one, the principle of absolute mirroring, the mirror. Camouflage through scapegoat optics. A fundamental law of covert warfare dictates that visible reality must be presented in an absolute mirror image to lull the enemy into a false sense of security. By allowing the mainstream media to lay the optical blame for rampant inflation, skyrocketing gas prices, and the sharpening Iran conflict squarely on Trump, he acts as the ultimate lightning rod, the strategic trap. While the global alliance is physically draining the economic lifelines of the deep state via the blockade of the Straits of Hormuz and the meltdown of the bond market, Trump is staged externally as the cause of the chaos. This prevents premature mass panic and leaves the corrupt elite believe they have regained control until the sudden EBS shock uncovers the true reality. Number two, dismantling the controlled opposition, the purge. Trump's unexpected public attacks on prominent figures of the Patriot movement serve as a dual military purpose: exposing systemic agents. The Q drops reportedly warned that the enemy would plant high-profile actors inside the movement to control and fracture it, controlled opposition. Trump's targeted strikes forced these individuals to react publicly. In this logic, they unmask themselves before the eyes of initiated observers, separating the wheat from the chaff, neutralizing partisan accusations. When the storm breaks and the military intervenes, the operation must not be perceived by the global public as a partisan revenge act of the MAGA movement. By distancing himself beforehand from prominent media figures and members of Congress within his own camp, the upcoming purge is legitimized for what it legally is: an unbiased, purely military measure to save the Constitution based on the law of war manual. Number three, staging the precipice of maximum pain. The necessity of the abyss. The golden age cannot begin until humanity is psychologically prepared for a total systemic shift, because the population must feel the incompetence and tyranny of the old world order firsthand. You must show them. Trump deliberately accepts this optical defeat. The further he appears to fall and the darker the global situation looks, the more dramatic and impactful the sudden liberation will be at the end. Number four, the mathematical completion, 45-247. Donald Trump's legacy is historically and legally sealed by this ultimate feint. He represents presidencies 45, 46 during the covert phase of the continuity of government, and 47, the restored republic. By appearing optically defeated, while the old fiat money and central banking systems collapse in reality, his final return on Global Independence Day is staged as that of a triumphant savior. He leads humanity out of slavery and into freedom at the exact moment of seemingly total destruction. Join me and Mike King for
Daily Report, guy. I got a 2-minute video on the Soccer World Cup.
With every city. We rise together. From every city, every shore. Different voices, one world to roar. We carry fire in our hands, drawing dreams across the lands. Under lights that touch the sky, we believe, we don't ask why. Every heartbeat sings as one when the whistle has begun. No bullets in the sound we make, no fear when history's at stake. We feel it now, it's all aligned. This moment is yours and mine. We are one world, one dream, shining brighter than it seems. Every nation, every heart, never falling apart. We are one world, one flame. Remember every name. When we stand as one till the final victory. when the lights go down, we'll still hear the sound of millions standing proud together here and now. We are one world, one dream, shining brighter than it seems. Every nation, every heart, never falling apart. We are one world, one flame. Remember every name. When we stand as one.
Hey, that was the first commercial for the World Cup. See what I got next here. Three minutes.
Today, including the corruption of Judge Boasberg. He's the one that is ordering President Trump to halt the deportation of all violent criminals. Wait until you hear what Representative Jim Jordan just uncovered about this activist judge. It could change everything. Plus, Attorney General Pam Bondi and Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, they continue to spar over the mounting threats that Elon Musk and Tesla are facing. But first, Kash Patel coming up with a big win for the country. Watch this.
This shows what the men and women of the FBI can do when they have leadership. The FBI has arrested and brought to justice, thanks to the Department of Justice and Pam Bondi, 3 top 10 of the FBI's most wanted. Let me just say that again. Not 1, not 2, but 3 of the FBI's most wanted top 10 are now in custody.
So I want to walk you through what these 3 criminals are wanted for. First, Francisco Javier Roman Bardales. He is a suspected MS-13 key senior leader. Now, he is wanted for his alleged role in ordering violence against civilians and drug distribution schemes in the U.S. and El Salvador. He is now in prison. Next is Analdo Jimenez, who is pending extradition to the United States for first-degree murder charges in Illinois, plus unlawful flight to avoid prosecution, meaning he tried to flee. And finally, Donald Eugene Fields II was arrested just 5 days after President Trump took office and has been on the FBI's most wanted list since May of 2023. He is wanted for child sex trafficking and child rape in St. Louis. Now, thanks to the hard work of Kash Patel and Pam Bondi, these men can no longer hurt anyone. Someone else looking to uphold the law is Tom Homan. Watch as ABC expresses concern over the criminals that Homan is trying to deport.
What we've heard from lawyers representing some of these people is that they deny that they're members of this gang, or either Tren de Aragua or MS-13. Do they get a chance to prove that before you take them out of the country and put them into a notorious prison in a country that they're not even from? I mean, do they have any due process at all?
Confidence. Look, due process. Where was Lake and Ronnie's due process? Where were all these young women that were killed and raped by members of TDA? Where was their due process?
Well, the people that did that should be prosecuted.
On the subway, where's her due process?
Well, sure.
The bottom line is that plane was full of people designated as terrorists. Number one. Number two, every Venezuelan migrant on that flight was a TDA member based on numerous criminal investigations, on intelligence reports, and a lot of work by ICE officers.
The only conclusion you can really draw from this right now is that the left thinks the entire law enforcement community involved in these deportations is incompetent. Democrats are trying to make the case that ICE is just rounding up anyone and everyone without doing a proper investigation into each arrest. And here's the thing. Well,
okay, one of our TikTok ladies with the news.
Safety post, because texting has really become sort of a thing in my house, and I think sometimes we just don't think about it from, I guess, this FBI perspective that I come from. I'm not here to judge parents, so everyone does have to do what's best for them, but I'm just kind of sharing some things that I've learned. along the way. So in our home, these are our rules. My daughter does not have a phone. She will not have a phone until she's 13, and she will not have social media until later than that. However, I do not believe in completely cutting off access to things like iPads or Apple Watches to kids at age appropriate times, because the reality is that is the world that we live in. They need to learn how to navigate those things. So the first thing, she cannot text anyone that she's never met in real life. We turn off all of the automatic location sharing that does come on the phones. AT&T and Android, you can limit communication to only people that are saved in contacts. That's what we do, and I highly recommend it. Here's another thing that I know might get some flack. Our daughter knows that she is never, ever, ever to send any picture of herself, appropriate, not appropriate, doesn't matter, via text. And then obviously social media will come at a later time, ever, full stop. And I have put a little bit of fear in her about doing that, because I've seen how a lot of these images can be used and manipulated using AI in very nefarious ways. And it has such a negative impact on children. And that goes to social media too. Again, I had someone who messaged me like, you put yourself out here on social media. What's the big deal with putting your child on this open page? Well, it's for that very same reason. Also, she can't really consent to being on my page, and it's not the point of my content, but those images actually can be used, can be manipulated, and they can have serious mental impacts on children. And also, she can never join a group chat without asking you. She has had some things with homework and group projects where she's had to be in like a group of 3 on a chat. No problem. She's allowed to do that if that's something we talk about. The other thing that I think is probably going to frustrate some people, just a piece of advice, the way I see it is if you don't have the time or perhaps maybe the funds to use a third party to either read all of your child's texts or monitor those texts, especially at this age of 11, they shouldn't have it. That's how I feel. I've seen things on group chats that I think if parents knew was going on, I don't think they would be too pleased. And I don't think that that's something that they'd want their child doing. Also, it helps us have really good conversations about how to navigate hard things like bullying, gossip, all those kinds of things. And so I feel very strongly about monitoring those at this stage of their life.
Okay, another important one there. Doing the shorts here.
Apart reveal a dangerous instinct reshaping our world, and they're Taiwan and Cuba. Both are small compared to their Goliath of a neighbor that they're less than 200 kilometers away from. Both sit in strategically loaded waters, and both embody the opposite political model to the superpower nearby. Cuba is the communist state in a capitalist-led hemisphere, America's old nightmare, hostile ideology embedded close to home. Taiwan is a democracy facing an authoritarian superpower, Beijing's sphere, a liberal Chinese-speaking alternative thriving just across the strait. America spent decades trying to contain, isolate, and pressure Cuba. China wants to reunify with Taiwan on its own terms. Different methods, same superpower instinct. My neighborhood must be inside my strategic order. But these islands are not passive pieces on a chessboard. Cuba courted Soviet protection to survive American pressure. Taiwan employs democracy, US support, and technological indispensability through chips to deter Chinese aggression. But what we are talking about is spheres of influence. They're ancient, of course, and in the Cold War, they became architectural. NATO here, Warsaw Pact there. But after the USSR collapsed, there was a hope or a pretense that this was fading into the recesses of history. But it wasn't. Russia denies Ukraine's right to exist as a sovereign state. China wants Taiwan under Beijing. America wants rival powers out of its hemisphere, the Domino Doctrine. And that's why I think Cuba and Taiwan as a parallel is worth paying attention to, because it demonstrates something that we see happening increasingly nakedly. Great powers speaking about sovereignty when that restrains their enemies, then talking about their security when others' sovereignty restrains them. And small islands near large powers are perhaps where that contradiction is the hardest to hide.
Okay, those are 3 good short ones there. I got a 10-minute one coming up.
with a concrete wall. The Mississippi River is trying to
Here.
escape right now. It wants to change course, leave millions without water. If one structure fails, it happens overnight. Louisiana sits at the mouth of this river, controls the drainage of 31 states. By all logic, it should be the most powerful state in America. Instead, the land is vanishing into the ocean, and the people are running from the state. Today, I'll tell you why America's most important state is falling apart. Louisiana sits at the mouth of the Mississippi River, the most important river in North America. 31 states drain their water through Louisiana into the Gulf of Mexico, but the Mississippi River is being held prisoner right now by a concrete structure. The river wants to change its course. It's trying to flow down a different path, the Atchafalaya River. That path is 150 miles shorter to the ocean, much steeper, much faster. Rivers aren't static. They move. They shift. As a river builds a delta, sediment piles up. The path to the ocean becomes too long, too shallow. Eventually, the river looks for a shorter route. This happens naturally every 1,000 years or so. The Mississippi has shifted across Louisiana's coast for millennia. Right now, the Mississippi wants to jump west. If it did, Baton Rouge and New Orleans would lose the river completely. No shipping access, no fresh water supply. Salt water would rush up the abandoned riverbed, contaminate the drinking water for millions of people. The port cities would become economically worthless overnight. So in the 1950s, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers built a solution, the Old River Control Structure, a massive complex of gates and channels designed to force 70% of the Mississippi's flow to stay in its current path. Only 30% is allowed down the Atchafalaya. The river has been fighting this restriction ever since. In 1973, a massive flood nearly destroyed the structure. The concrete cracked. The foundations shook. Engineers worked around the clock to save it. If it had failed, the Mississippi would have jumped course immediately. The structure held, barely. They've reinforced it since then, but the river keeps trying. Every major flood is a test. This is the most critical piece of infrastructure in America. Most Americans have never heard of it. Louisiana spends billions maintaining it, fighting nature, just to keep the status quo. While other states invest in growth, Louisiana invests in survival. But the river isn't the only thing trying to leave. Louisiana loses a football field of land every 100 minutes to coastal erosion. That's not an estimate, it's measured by satellite. The land is disappearing into the Gulf. Southern Louisiana wasn't formed by tectonic uplift. It was built by the Mississippi River. Over the last 7,000 years, the river carried sediment from 31 states. Dirt, sand, clay eroded from the continental interior. When the river reached the Gulf, the water slowed. The sediment settled, dropped to the bottom. Layer after layer accumulated, eventually rising above the water's surface. That became land, the Mississippi River Delta. But land built from river sediment isn't solid. It's composed of loose, wet material. No bedrock underneath, just thousands of feet of compacted mud. If you dig a hole in New Orleans, water fills it immediately. The water table sits just inches below the surface. This creates a fundamental problem. The weight of the sediment above squeezes water out of the layers below. The ground compresses, sinks, subsides. This is a natural process, but historically, the river compensated for it. Every spring, the Mississippi flooded, spread across the delta, deposited a fresh layer of sediment. The new sediment replaced what sunk, a sustainable cycle. Then, in the early 1900s, humans built levees, concrete walls along the entire river, to protect cities and farmland from flooding. The levees worked, the flooding stopped, but so did the sediment deposition. The river now flows straight to the Gulf, dumps its sediment into deep water, where it's useless. The land keeps sinking, but nothing replaces it. The coast erodes. Marshes turn to open water. Islands vanish. But sinking coastline is just one problem. Half of New Orleans sits below sea level. The city is built in a bowl, surrounded by levees, water on all sides. The Mississippi River, Lake Pontchartrain, the Gulf of Mexico, all of them sit higher than parts of the city. New Orleans was originally built on natural levees, ridges of high ground formed by river sediment. These were the only areas above flood level. But as the city grew, it needed more space. The only direction to expand was into the back swamp. low-lying wetlands behind the natural levees. To make this land usable, engineers drained it, pumped out the water. But draining saturated Louisiana soil causes subsidence. The ground collapses when the water is removed. The more they drained, the lower the land sank. New Orleans literally excavated itself into a depression. Today, the lowest parts of the city sit 6 feet below sea level. The average elevation is 1 to 2 feet below sea level. The city requires massive pumping stations, operating continuously, just to remove rainwater. Without these pumps, a heavy rainstorm would flood the city, even without a hurricane. And hurricanes are the existential threat. In 2005, Hurricane Katrina overwhelmed the levee system. 80% of New Orleans flooded. Some areas sat under 20 feet of water. Over 1,800 people died. $125 billion in damage. The city lost half its population. Many never returned. Rebuilding cost billions, but it didn't fix the fundamental problem, the geography. New Orleans will always be below sea level, always dependent on pumps and levees, always one major storm away from catastrophe. Insurance companies understand this. Premiums are astronomical. Many insurers have left the state entirely. Major corporations don't build headquarters in high-risk flood zones. Investment capital flows to stable ground. New Orleans became a city with a ceiling on growth. Chicago grew into a rail hub, New York into a financial center. New Orleans remained a port. Important for shipping, but not for building long-term wealth. And the people who could leave did. Louisiana's population is shrinking. The state lost 40,000 residents between 2020 and 2023, while Texas gained over 1 million in the same period. Florida gained 700,000. Even Mississippi, another Gulf state, held steady. Louisiana has good universities: LSU, Tulane, Louisiana Tech. They educate talented students. Then watch them leave for Houston, Atlanta, Dallas. This is called brain drain. The best educated workers flee to states with better opportunities. Louisiana also has an environmental crisis. The 85-mile stretch of the Mississippi River between Baton Rouge and New Orleans contains over 150 petrochemical plants and refineries. This region is called Cancer Alley, not officially, by residents, because cancer rates in some parishes are significantly higher than the national average. The plants emit pollutants: benzene, formaldehyde, chlorine. The air quality is poor. The soil is contaminated in some areas. These plants provide thousands of jobs, but they also create a quality of life problem. Modern knowledge workers don't want to raise families in heavily industrialized areas. They choose cleaner environments: Austin, Raleigh, Seattle. Louisiana loses them. The state also suffers from a legacy of political dysfunction. In the 1930s, Governor Huey Long consolidated power in unprecedented ways. He controlled state contracts, jobs, and spending, built roads and hospitals, but also established a patronage system. After his assassination in 1935, that system persisted. For decades, Louisiana politics operated on connections and kickbacks. Legitimate businesses found it difficult to operate. Entrepreneurs went elsewhere. This reputation for corruption lingered. It still affects economic development today. Additionally, Louisiana became dependent on oil and gas revenue. When oil was discovered in the Gulf, the state's budget relied heavily on extraction royalties. This is called the resource curse. States with abundant natural resources often fail to diversify their economies. They don't invest in education, infrastructure, or innovation, because resource revenues cover the budget until they don't. Oil prices fluctuate. Reserves deplete. Louisiana didn't build a backup economy. Louisiana should be one of America's dominant states. It controls the mouth of the Mississippi River. The river drains 31 states, 41% of the continental United States. Over 500 million tons of cargo move through Louisiana's ports annually. The Port of South Louisiana is the largest tonnage port in the Western Hemisphere. Louisiana is essential. It absorbs Gulf hurricanes that would otherwise hit Texas or Florida. It processes oil and gas for the entire nation. By geography alone, Louisiana should rival Texas, Florida, or California in power. Instead, it's collapsing. The river is held in place by aging concrete. If that structure fails, the economy collapses. Louisiana didn't fail independently. It was sacrificed. The entire nation depends on Louisiana staying exactly where it is, taking the damage so the interior doesn't have to. The most strategically important state, and the The U.S. government is holding a whole river as a prisoner with a concrete wall. The Mississippi River is trying to escape right now. It wants to change course, leave.
Sorry about that. Thought that was an important one there. Did we play this one? I can't remember either on this one.
The Strategic Air Command's mission over the Arctic in the late 1940s revealed that the magnetic North Pole was.
Yeah, I'm going to play this one here. This interview is a good one here to listen to. It's 15 minutes, though.
It occurred to me that I didn't want to believe what I was seeing.
I mean, this is a good one.
We hadn't written any stories. I was working for John Solomon then. We were a very close team. I went into John's office and I said, John, I need to talk to you. I believe that there are people in the FBI spying on President-elect Trump, duly elected president of the United States. He thought, what are you talking about? This can't be happening. This isn't. Let me call my sources, because John had great sources, has great sources.
Still
He's
does.
amazing. He's amazing. Comes back. I'm not too sure. Then we start working together on this because we're not going to let it go. And John probably tells the story about the people that came to his house late at night.
Told that story right here.
Yeah. So he left so right on the money. I had my sources. Together, we were able to unravel the beginnings of what was, to me, the most important story in American history. And one day, maybe 50 years from now, maybe 100 years from now, when people look back, they'll realize the significance of that, the expansion of powers, the violation of Fourth Amendment, Rosemary Ann Collier from the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, who went after the Obama administration for expanding their spying powers in the United States. And everything that we did was because of the American people. I have people coming up to me and saying, oh, did you know President Trump? Did you know him before? I had no idea. I didn't operate in those circles. I'm not, I'm not from that.
Now you're our nation's drug czar.
Now I'm the drug czar. But I want to say this. President Donald J. Trump truly cares about the American people. And he's empowered us and law enforcement partners, our Homeland Security task forces, everybody who's working together, whether that's, FBI Director Kash Patel, the Attorney General, Terry Cole with the DEA, Stephen Miller and his incredible work on the HSTFs, all of us to save American lives. And I think truly, I'm so honored and so humbled. He is really the most consequential president in modern political history. And every day I wake up, I have to pinch myself. I can't believe I work for him. And then I walk into the office and I see his pictures with his eagle eye looking at me. And I think, oh, I'm not working hard. I got to work harder. I got to get out there. We got to do more. So I feel blessed, Sean. I feel blessed.
I want to just stay on this for a second, because this is really important, because John and Greg were sitting where you were sitting.
Yeah.
Dan Bongino was here. He was the deputy FBI director. Kash Patel sat in the seat you're in right now. And the most amazing part is all of that work. This was every single solitary night we were doing this story. We knew we were right. We knew our sources were so good. And then I started saying, John, maybe you break that story. Sarah, why don't you break? Catherine Herridge was with us. Maybe you break that. Greg, you break this one.
Yes, because they were delivering the information. You were the one person that said, with the reach and the power, and you put a lot on the line, Sean. I remember.
Well, I was wrong. I wouldn't be here.
Yeah, if I was wrong, I wouldn't be here. And I remember people coming up to me, people that loved you, care about you, have worked with you since the very beginning, saying to me, Sarah, please tell me that you're right. Sean has faith in you. I want to make sure that everything's on the up and up, that every source, every I has been dotted, every T has been crossed. And I swore to them, and even to Fox News, we will never deliver anything unless we absolutely have the facts to back it
There
up.
were times we all got frustrated because we didn't have two sources. We'd have to have three,
Right.
just in case. And there were moments it was dicey. The most ironic thing is my career would have been over. Your career would have been over.
Right.
John and Greg's career probably would have been over if we were all wrong. Here's the other side of it, though. The legacy media were wrong. They were just lying. They were making it up. They'd come on, CNN, breaking news, and then they'd say, Donald Trump, Russian collusion. And it was a lie. It was, I'll look at you, look at me at home. It was complete bullshit. They've never apologized. They've never recanted. They've never corrected the record. They've never said the words, I am wrong. Like I like to say to my kids, if I did something wrong, I was wrong. I'm sorry. Those words go very far. And here's the other part, is we have been vindicated on a level that I never expected. Here's the interesting part. Dan Bongino, right here on this podcast, do you remember his tweet that he put out, said a democratic republic cannot survive based on what he found that night? You remember that?
Right. I do.
What was your reaction to that?
I understood exactly where Dan was coming from, and it was terrifying. And he's absolutely right. It cannot survive with what we had discovered.
Yeah.
And some of the stories that we never even were able to tell because we had to have the third source, or we were protecting sources. It terrifies me to think where our nation would have been. Think about this. And I always bring people back to this. December 2016, I'm with Sinclair Network at the time, and I interview John Brennan. He's soon to be leaving the CIA. He granted me a 45-minute interview with him. I went to the headquarters. I did my interview with him. We were both one-on-one.
Remember when this was? The date?
Yeah, it was, I don't remember the exact date, but it was December 2016. And I had no idea
what was going on.
What was really going on. This was interesting. He asked me, how do you feel about President-elect Trump and Michael Flynn?
Wow.
And I said to him, how do you want me to feel about President-elect Trump and Michael Flynn?
Wow.
And it just ended right there. That, not the interview, but the chit chat. So
why do you think it ended?
Because I think he realized at that moment that I wasn't going to be played. And I think what had happened was both John Brennan, with James Clapper, James Comey had together, their little trifecta, had targeted President Trump in an operation to discredit him before the world. And it was seditious, and it was malicious, and it was dangerous. And it has all of these lies that they spewed. Because remember, it was January 2017 where they go to brief the president.
No, if you remember, the presidential daily briefing.
Oh, yes,
Okay,
yes.
Career senior intel officials concluded no Russian interference.
Yes, that's right. But they still
They
went.
met with Obama and Biden.
That's right.
And Brennan and Clapper, December 2016. This is just when you're interviewing.
When I'm interviewing him.
And
That's
Obama
yeah, you're right.
didn't like the assessment. He asked for another one that ended up contradicting. And they set Trump up for this.
Right.
They were
They
all
set him
about-
up, but they did it in January, Sean, because when they went to brief President Trump on Christopher Steele's dodgy
other meeting.
dossier.
Okay.
Yeah, the other meeting.
I'm
When they
There's a lot.
there were a lot of meetings. When they go to brief him on that, that's where they try to set him up, because that's when they can leak the dossier to Jake Tapper and others in the media and spread the malicious lie. They know it's a lie. They
knew
just
in
need
August
somebody to deliver the lie.
They knew in August of 2016 it
Yes,
was a
they
lie.
knew it was a lie.
Even Bruce Orr, whose wife Nellie worked for Fusion GPS, even he
I
warned
remember-
Comey, don't use it, it's political. And Brennan even said, he went to the president early and said, Hillary's concocted this scheme.
Yeah. And it was like, but still, everybody got on board.
They did.
And then they went and then they spread these malicious rumors. And the media was so easily bought into this because these were their sources, right? And this was their bread and butter.
Right.
So they were willing and just helped move this lie, not just in the United States, but across the globe. Think about how dangerous that is. If I were to run an operation against a foreign adversary, let's say I wanted to run an operation against a foreign adversary, just throw out somebody out that once existed, Saddam Hussein, for example, and I were to run an operation against them, a psychological warfare operation or an operation where I'm pushing out deceptiveness or lies, I would need to get a presidential authority to do that because you're actually putting people's lives in danger. So they ran an operation that put President Trump's life in danger and took the American people into years of lies, and it ripped this nation apart, and they didn't even care. And not one person has really paid the price
No, not
for what
yet.
has happened. I'm talking about legally, through the courts.
Here's the interesting thing and we'll come full circle, and there's so much more to talk to you about. You in war zones, you on the border, your coverage that you did for the TV show for years. But right here, Dan Bongino revealed he believes that some honorable FBI agent purposely saved those burn bags. He said on this podcast, in those burn bags, they put it in writing. They were so arrogant. Kash Patel on this podcast confirmed they have evidence. They put it in writing, and that it was in a safe room at the FBI. It was, as Kash described it, a room they didn't even know existed.
Yeah.
And some honorable person put it in there, and leading crumbs, hoping that the new people would find it and get to the truth, confirming, corroborating all the reporting that all of us put our hearts and soul into. I mean, if you didn't follow it at home, your country can't survive. Dan is right.
It can't. But remember this, we have whoever that was that put that information in those burn bags and left it in that room, which I also agree with Dan on and Kash on, putting that in that room. That tells me that there are really great people.
Yeah.
And every single day that I go to the office or I work with the FBI or I talk to folks
brought a bunch of them with you
at the DEAS, these are the great Americans, right? These are people that spend every single day of their life working for this republic to ensure that we are on the right track, to ensure that the American people are safe and that their taxpayer dollars are being spent correctly. And when when I was just out in Puerto Rico and I was out with the Coast Guard and I'm watching them train and they're young guys and they're out there in those boats, think about what they put on the line every day. Or when you go, out with the DEA and every single day they're putting their life on the line, or the FBI, and, just like our friend Nicole Parker, who, lost her best friend in who was an FBI agent. Every single day, these are the best of the best men and women. And sadly,
The last one is 4 minutes
there are those
TikTok
that are
lady,
mired in
the one that we
corruption,
just had.
that have too much power. Their power's gone to their heads. I would say Brennan, Comey, and Clapper, were examples of that. And they felt that they knew better than what the American people knew. They felt that they were able to make decisions for us.
Let's tie a bow on this because it was years of our life. And I don't know. I mean, people ask me what I think about my career. I'm like, I judge me by the work that I've done. And we've been right when they're wrong so often. I can write a list and put it on the screen. I won't. But here's the best part: is Kash is investigating a grand conspiracy. What does that mean? Statute of limitations don't matter anymore. If there's a grand conspiracy and what's in those burn bags, all of these people that we talked about for all of those years, I believe are in legal jeopardy, and hopefully there'll be justice, or else it will happen again, or worse.
Or worse. And I wouldn't want to think or worse what that could be.
No.
But people have to be held accountable. And a grand conspiracy is exactly the direction that this needs to go in.
Yeah.
And, you know, I pray every day that all of the truth will come out. The American people deserve the truth. Truth is, I mean, the best disinfectant, right? It's sunlight. And the American people are strong enough, smart enough, tough enough to handle it. It is not somebody's job in Washington, D.C., in the bubble of D.C., not mine, not anyone's, to keep that from the American people. We have a republic. Our founding fathers established it because they had faith in the people of this nation. And that's why this nation has survived.
Yeah.
And it is a great experiment, but I believe it's far more than that. And I already have seen the fruit of that labor. Look where we're at. Look where they're at.
That was a good interview, I thought.
I probably shouldn't say this, but
It's under a 15-minute interview, so that was good. Yeah, our one TikTok lady, it's a new one that she just came out. 4 minutes out. Sometime tomorrow evening.
Absolutely wreck them. They're now claiming that women in the United States are just as oppressed as women in Iran. And it's always the people who have benefited the most from our system that are now the loudest critics. Wait until you see this offensive, out-of-touch argument by Joy Reid. Then over at MS Now, they're pulling out the race card on Pete Hegseth's commentary about the Iran war. The American people should politely decline that transaction. Plus, President Trump is out there setting the record straight, answering tough questions today about the Strait of Hormuz and giving a masterclass on how this conflict could impact gas prices. Someone has to tell the world what leadership looks like. Democrats, on the other hand, they are holding American travelers hostage with their partial government shutdown. TSA lines are so long that even CNN's Jake Tapper is shaking his head and calling out his own party. Drop a comment below on the airport chaos and who you think will cave first. And don't forget to like and subscribe because you're about to watch this nonsense get dismantled. Let's start today's show with Joy Reid because this clip, it pretty much blew my mind. Listen carefully as she claims women in the United States are being oppressed the same way women in Iran are. Then try not to laugh, cry, or both at the same time. Watch this.
Okay,
Our regime has secret police. They have secret police. Our regime is oppressing women, taking away abortion rights, taking away women's rights in like 26 states. Some states where they're trying to have the death penalty for having an abortion. They also oppress women. They have the highest rate of women who are in STEM careers. We're kicking women out of the military, out of university. We're saying that DEI means women can't be hired for high positions in the sciences. We're marginally better. And we're doing it for Christianity. They're doing it for Islam, right? Yeah. So it's like we don't get told those things because it would take away the kind of American exceptionalism.
Comparing ICE to Iran's secret police is one of those takes that makes you wonder if she has access to Google. ICE enforces immigration laws passed by Congress. Iran has an actual morality police that can stop women on the street for showing their hair. They can stop them for how they dress and punish them for speaking out. If America had secret police, Joy Reid wouldn't be saying this in front of a camera. She'd be saying it from a jail cell. Or maybe she wouldn't be saying it at all. Then she says the U.S. is oppressing women. We're kicking them out of universities, out of the military, out of science jobs. Really? Because I looked. And apparently the secret plan to remove women from college is so secret that it doesn't exist. Women make up a huge share of students. In fact, women have been the majority since 1980. As for the most recent year, 2025, there isn't a single official national release yet on numbers, but all current data shows the same trend, about 58% female to 42% male. If that's oppression, it's the least effective oppression campaign in history. And women being kicked out of the military, yeah, that's not happening either. Reviewing standards so people in combat roles can actually meet the requirements isn't misogyny, it's how you avoid losing wars. Funny how expecting men and women to meet the same strength standards in a life or death situation is suddenly unacceptable. But in sports, we're told the exact opposite. And did you notice she didn't say a word about her own party supporting policies that let biological men compete in women's...
Okay, that was another good one from her. Her latest new one she just came out with. Okay, everybody have a great weekend. I don't see ya. 2 good shows we had today. Thanks, Maj. Okay, Michael, Carol, Tim, Lucy. And God bless everybody. Love all. Everybody please hit the like. Stay safe, stay strong, keep the faith. Never give up. And signing off for Friday the 29th. Tomorrow will be the 30th and Sunday 31. Chico dude. Have a good weekend, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow evening sometime. Unless something breaks, something big comes up.